Dan San is the CEO at Sidekick AI, a B2B SaaS platform that helps businesses create landing pages using AI. Before this, he took Mural from 0 to 5 million in ARR in 24 months and has helped scale multiple companies through both sales leadership and consulting. Today, we're talking about the gap between what works when you're scaling someone else's company versus building your own, and how the skills and tactics that drive hypergrowth at one stage become the exact constraints that you need to break through at the next. This is Are You Getting More? Dan, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Lisa. Thank you for having me.
Now, you have a fascinating bio on LinkedIn. I see that you went from college dropout doing face-to-face direct sales to closing seven-figure ARR deals. What was the transition point where you realized that the skills that got you to a certain point just wouldn't take you any further? And what did you have to unlearn?
My mentality is that the learning process never ends. I may be a college dropout, but I'm a firm believer in continuous self-education and also continuously keeping your mind open so that you can gather new information. And of course, there are things you learn over time that maybe you could have principles and rigidity around, but just in terms of, the world, especially technology, but just in general, just learning, keeping an open mind, traveling allows me to be able to continuously evolve and adapt versus staying stagnant. And I would say the biggest thing to prevent constraints is develop self-awareness, keep educating yourself, and also surround yourself with really smart people who are happy to provide real feedback to you and challenge you.
Now, you took Mural from 0 to 5 million in 24 months with 400% year-over-year growth. Most founders would kill for that trajectory. What's the one thing you did that felt risky or even counterintuitive at the time, but ended up being critical to that growth?
I would say pushing for us to raise the prices, because when I mentioned that, I'm
Oh,
like, we need
interesting.
to raise the prices. And they were like, why?
Hmm.
They're like, why would we want to make it affordable? I'm like, of course, it already wasn't really that affordable. It was like, what, 400, $500. But it wasn't just about that. It was about the fact that we needed the margins to get into retail where it would make economic sense as a scalable model for the business. And without that, we would have never been able to grow into those multiple millions of dollars of revenue. Just that one decision alone, which I got heavy pushback initially from both of the co-founders from, but was able to convince them of, completely changed the trajectory of the company. Because of that margin, then allowed us to be able to first, actually, I didn't even mention, actually, after the affiliates, I started focusing on drop shippers as well, not just affiliates, like drop shippers, because it's easier to move inventory. It's lower risk on all ends. We don't have to send them inventory until they sell. Then we started focusing more.
You've now built two B2B SaaS products that have acquired over 3,000 customers across 20 plus countries. When you compare building Sidekick to your previous experience scaling other people's companies, what surprised you the most about being on the founder side of the table?
Well, I enjoy it because I've always had a founder mindset, even when I was a head of sales. And I went with the mindset of I wanted to use sales as a foundational skill to be able to apply as a founder and then from there expand. When you're a founder, you have to look at everything, the product, the
Mhm.
sales, the marketing, the finance, and you have to understand it not only well, but you have to understand how to move the direction forward, set a vision. And in this case, Psychic is different than my first SaaS, which failed mainly just because we should have raised capital for that. We tried bootstrapping it. We did actually start generating revenue quite quickly with that through live concerts and all that. That's a separate SaaS,
Oh,
but
wow.
we ended up shipping too late. And by the time we shipped, we had over 1,000 people sign up. Unfortunately, a small percentage actually became paying customers. And had we raised funds, we probably could have turned that into something that at least would have been a decent sized, small SaaS business, maybe in the millions for that niche of music artists. But that the biggest mistake was not being clear on should we raise capital or not, and trying to do everything like I was like, "All right, let me just do sales," but that was my mindset, right? So sales is great,
Yeah.
but as a founder, you have to think about the big picture and how you're gonna effectively scale, recruit the right people. And if sometimes you just need a certain amount of capital where raising capital will make more sense. In that case, that would make more sense. Sidekick AI is different because it was profitable from day one when I acquired it, which when I acquired it, it was a very young, early stage product, only a little bit over a year
Mhm.
old, but it went viral. I saw potential. However, the churn was very high, and the product itself I felt was still essentially basic, but it was one of the first AI landing page builders in the world. It came out late 2022, August 2022 to be exact. And I saw opportunity. So I ended up actually rebuilding the entire platform, the business model, all that. So there's a lot of things I had to do way outside of sales, looking at SEO, looking at
Actually, that
marketing.
leads quite perfectly into my next question. Looking at Sidekick, you're selling AI powered landing page creations into a crowded market with established players. How do you think about positioning and pipeline generation? And what mistakes do you see other founders making in a similar position?
I have more of a sales background. I don't have an SEO background, but I wanted to learn more about organic marketing, right? So newsletter, SEO, I continue building affiliate marketing, right? So if you want to stand out, you have to build a great product, yes, but also position yourself well, know your customer well, know what niche you're serving. I know my customers, non-technical people, they don't even have to be founders of large, they could be solopreneurs, small business owners, people who have a plumbing company, people who are non-technical who want an easy, simple, and fast way to build a website that is easier for them to set up. And that's where
Mhm.
Sidekick AI excels, is that we're the fastest and easiest to set up. That gives you everything you need, including e-commerce, basically everything, that you could set up, just SEO, all that. And that's essentially how we stand out. However, it is still tough. It's a competitive market, especially now, because there's way more website and landing page builders. If you're in a great space, eventually it will become more crowded. And the only way to compete
Mhm.
is through marketing and positioning.
Now, you mentioned Muse, that's Music Unites Souls Everywhere, and you spent nearly 4 years running this company alongside your SaaS work. That wasn't just a side project, that was your whole second company. How did operating in that completely different domain influence how you think about sales, product, or even building Sidekick?
It heavily influenced it. And I think it was a great experience, even though we failed, because we actually succeeded a few years. We got, to 3,000 a month in the first literally month with a music company, just doing concerts, we got sponsored by
Mhm, mhm.
Jameson. We were getting, then
Wow.
COVID happened. So this is literally right before
Ah,
COVID. You can't control the marketplace. You can't control the timing. Know before you go in, should it be VC backed or not? If it is, raise money while the markets are good, because when they're not, it's going to be way harder and you'll probably
uh-huh,
raise in worse terms. I don't have much experience or any experience personally raising money, so I'm not going to go too much into that. I'm more of a bootstrapper. I do
uh-huh,
plan on
uh-huh.
raising money eventually for a venture where it makes sense, but I don't feel Sidekick AI is that venture. So one of the lessons I would share from that is make sure you know as a founder whether or not you should raise money or not. Be responsible. If you're not generating enough sales yet, or there's not a pathway to generate enough sales to recruit the people you need or to scale it. If you want to make it that type of business, raise money.
You've been an interim head of sales, a consultant helping companies grow 250% and more, and now a founder. When you consult CEOs on sales versus building your own sales motion at Sidekick, what's the pattern you see in what works in theory versus what actually works when you're in the trenches?
That's a great question. And I think it actually varies depending on the type of company you're building, right? So, for example, if you're a product-led SaaS, you should be more focusing on marketing as your main traction channel more than sales. If you have like
Hmm.
a smaller, like prosumer, like kind of like Sidekick, right? Now, if you're selling more
Yeah, yeah.
expensive or a company, enterprise level software, then you should mainly be focused on sales. What I actually do in my consulting, it's evolved over time. It started as consulting for IoT companies, SaaS companies to help them with sales, and I was helping different IoT companies get into retail, get partnerships with that. Then it evolved into helping SaaS companies. I've even helped some agencies. One thing I like to do is get the CEOs in the trenches. I work directly with CEOs and I teach them how to sell to enterprises now. This is what I mainly do. So, Fortune 500, how to sell the biggest companies. And then I help them set up, if they want to set up a team, the whole process, right? So, how do they then create a blue book? How do they create SOPs to then be able to train other salespeople they bring in without having to create a giant sales team? That's another mistake people make, is I feel like they build these giant sales teams where instead of just building a smaller team of highly effective, high initiative people who don't really need much managing. The focus is the founder needs to first learn how to sell themselves. And then this way, when you start building a sales team, you know what to look out for. That's a big mistake I see a lot of founders in tech make, because they sometimes have just a tech background, maybe marketing, but they don't know how to recruit salespeople. They don't know what to look out for. They don't know how to build that. And they waste a lot of time and money. And so I look at things from all different angles. I'm looking at it like, how can it be efficient? Going back to sales, right? Make sure your business model and your product are solid before you start
Uh-huh.
doubling down on scaling up your sales aggressively. Because if not, you're going to be doing deals that are, let's say, if terrible margins, we're actually losing money. And sometimes, again, VC backed companies build bad habits sometimes because they become accustomed to just go, oh, we'll figure it out later. No, you
Hmm.
can just
Hmm.
start figuring it out now. You're just kind of wasting and burning through resources that these investors are trusting with, but also it makes more sense to just be asked these questions sooner, right? So I would say if you are going to have a pathway to profitability, you're not there yet, a large part of that is going to be your margins, your pricing, and looking at the type of market you're selling to. When you're selling to enterprise, there's much longer contract lengths, 1, 2, 3 years, sometimes longer,
Hmm.
5 years, and much larger sizes, but they require more customization. You may have account manager. So again, your go-to-market and your sales strategy is going to vary on that. With Sidekick, I'm more focused on attracting, marketing, attracting customers, growing it like that, which is a separate skill set. However, when it comes to sales, like I said, the founder needs to learn how to sell first, and then they also need to learn how to recruit salespeople, and they need to learn how to actually measure sales performance, right? So, for example, habits. A lot of times people just look at, okay, I'm trying to, quota, trying to close, like get organized. What's in your pipeline, right? Who are you talking to? How many deals do you have in your pipeline? What companies you talking to? What are the stages? That should all be in a CRM. That should be regularly looked at daily by the salesperson, their sales manager, or ideally the CEO. It's an earlier stage company should be looking at this every week and knowing the numbers. And I feel like sometimes CEOs don't pay attention enough, and that's actually the most fundamental thing in their business. Because if you're not generating sales, you're not going to have a sustainable business. And whatever problem you're trying to solve,
Right,
you're not going to be able to
right.
keep solving it. It's just, and that happens to most startups. So be careful with
And
that.
a lot
And
of early stage founders specifically ask whether to focus on product or sales first. I think your answer is sales, but is it? Or is product equally
that's a good
important?
question. I would say actually both initially, only because product I would say is the most important overall first. But
Uh-huh.
why I think sales should be part of that process, especially actually no matter what product it is, it can be a hardware product or SaaS. And I've consulted founders who's it's called basically you could sell something before you've even built it as a concept. Say, hey, we plan on building X, Y, and Z. You go through an interview process. You talk to potential people who you'd be solving the problem for. Maybe you're one of those people, but you still should talk to other ones. See, is what you're gonna build something that actually be useful to them? Like what would it do? This is something I learned. I did UX UI training, like how to do these interviews, how to take that information, create a minimal viable prototype, which you could do even as a non-technical person, make something simple.
Uh-huh.
Boom. So you're being super efficient with your resources. You're already validating what you're going to build before you even built it. You can pre-sell it, give them a massive discount, 50%, 70%, or whatever, or even just
Uh-huh.
they pay for 1 month or a few months worth. Now you've proven the concept to an extent and you have some capital to then invest into building a more higher fidelity, minimal viable product. So you're doing both at the same time. Your product's evolution is conjoined with your customer-centric approach, which then gives you information that could allow you to build a way better product than your competitors who are just throwing darts thinking they know everything their customers want where they're not even talking to their customers. And so you're
Sure.
not only building your product better, faster, but you're building a better product overall because you're customer centric from the very beginning versus let's ship out this MVP we spent 6 months working on, see the customers think, which I've done. I've made that mistake. And so it's not just about generating revenue early on. It's about listening to
Mhm.
the customer, getting their information and feedback. And I feel like sales in and of itself, some people forget that they just get focused on the numbers. Yes, that matters,
Sure.
but what really matters, are you solving their problems? Is it a good fit for them?
Dan, your integrity definitely shines through everything that you're
I
sharing with
appreciate
us.
that.
Thank you. Now, on your LinkedIn profile, you quote Edison about a genius not being inspiration, but rather 99% perspiration, meaning lots and lots of hard work. The quote that you mentioned is finding 10,000 ways that something doesn't work rather than describing something as failing. Looking back at everything that you've built and scaled, what's the one principle or operating belief that's remained constant to you, even as the specific tactics evolved?
I would say the main principle has been focusing on solving problems that I'm interested and passionate about because that provides you the energy you need to keep going and get to a point where you could really excel at solving that problem and build a team and recruit a team that's passionate about solving that problem. So for me, that not only has it helped me do that to where I've attracted great opportunities because of that, and we're attractive to those opportunities because of that, but also even when I have failed or didn't make much or even lost money or whatever, my fulfillment is super high all the time. So I've been fulfilled literally this entire 10 years, even when I was, failing. Now I'm doing well, profitable, everything, very healthy business. But I feel fulfilled the whole time because I'm selective about what I focus on, the problems I'm trying to solve, and making sure that is this a problem that I'm interested in solving? Am I the type of person who would be passionate enough to recruit the people who could help solve this problem? Do I have some knowledge about it? You know, that's another thing. Founder product fit, founder company fit. Like sometimes people try to find something because it's trendy. This is like AI, for example. It may not always make
Mhm.
sense. Not every company needs to be getting AI. And there's a lot of useless garbage stuff is being made. Like it doesn't solve a problem
Sure.
that you're passionate about and that you're going to be willing to suffer for initially, whether you raise money or not. But especially if you're a bootstrapper, guy, Van, you may actually suffer trying to solve a problem, but it's always rewarding when you eventually get to the point where you're solving the problem, you're evolving, your customers are happy, your team is evolving, things are evolving. So combination of passion, utility, finding that intersection and sticking to the areas I'm interested in, like SaaS, AI, and IoT. Right? People say, oh, crypto, this, that, people get distracted. Focus on what you're interested in, what you're competent in, find that intersection. Kind of like Ikigai, I guess you could say, but that's been the biggest thing. And for me, it's honestly worked.
Well, you are a beautiful story of inspiration and success. Thank you so much for being on our show, Dan.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate it. It was a pleasure.
To those of you listening, if you want to connect with Dan and find out what they're doing at Sidekick AI, the link is in the description. This has been Are You Getting More? And we'll see you next time.